Thank you so much. Take care, guys. Thanks for coming on.
All right, we're back. Thanks for staying with us. Planet Green Trees, episode number 391. I'm your host, Michael Kamorn. Our next topic, as Jim has so eloquently outlined here, is legalizing recreational marijuana. We're going to that, or do you want to? First of all, let me make an announcement. Many people may be asking and wondering what has happened with the new conditions that are currently pending. I guess for those that maybe following along, the status is still uncertain in terms of its approval with the Director of LARA. It was a final say after the 10 conditions, the 22 that were petitioned to be placed on the MMA were voted by a majority. There's 3 that are going to be reheard, tabled until another time. And Comorn Law and its affiliates and surrogates are going to be filing additional petitions attempting to add even more conditions. That's the status. Anyone have a comment on that? Jim?
I would just like to say that I know people are really on edge about whether Director Shelley Edgerton will approve these petitions or not, but I don't believe Shelley Edgerton is an obstructionist, and I think she'll do the right thing and put the board's recommendation forward. all of the conditions. I think she'll just rubber stamp it and be done.
I would agree with that, or at least I'd like to believe that. Obviously, we talked about this last week at some length, how some monumental events took place there that are what we perceived as, for purposes of the made-for-TV movie, Eden Wells would have been our villain enemy, and we were able to convince her to come around, which is kind of fascinating. Which would be another reason, maybe, if the medical director is supporting it, I think, at least for many of those. How many did she, of the 10, how many of those did she oppose? Those that voted 3, there was, no.
There were a couple.
There's a couple 4 to 2.
There were a couple.
She was always the 5, right?
But the big one was autism, though, because we all know that she was, not only did she vote against autism the last go-around, but she really led the charge politically against it. She recruited Brian Calley to make the comments that he did, and she was the mastermind behind that. And for her to come around like that, I don't understand it. Maybe she realized she was on the losing end of the argument. I mean, I really don't know. She cited that there had been additional research and such, but it just seems like a complete 180.
It is a strange, who knows? You never really know if people change their mind, right? We like to think that it was because of all of our convincing arguments, and when there could be a whole other slew of reasons that she did. We don't know. But needless to say, we are hoping that...
less of a team player now than she used to be.
I mean, at the end of the day, the greatest accomplishment is that we've gotten the panel on 2 different occasions to have 9 people vote in favor of it when given the opportunity out of 12. Yeah. When given the opportunity, we got convinced 9 people. You know, the 9 votes out of 2 same people sometimes. But, anyways, you would think with that that one would pass least. If we were going to pick one that we think could be denied, someone that someone would put money on, or do you think it's going to be all or nothing? Do you think Shelley's going to take the steps to look at them individually and look at the researchers? Do you think she's going to grab the recommendation of the board?
No, she's not.
She's a lawyer.
She's smart. She understands that she is not qualified. Not qualified, period. She has a board that is qualified, that's made up as a majority of medical doctors. So if I'm her, and she, so far, her behavior during the licensing, implementation, and everything that she has exhibited has been reasonable and fair, as far as I can tell. And there is no reason for me to believe that she will do anything other than just issue a statement saying, I approve of these conditions per the recommendation of the Medical Marijuana Review Panel. Period. Shelley Edgerton. Bump. Done.
Who do you think wrote Mike Zimmer's final determination on autism and went back through the record, looked at the testimony, cited it, and then brought it forward to create the reasoning out of the record to override the panel's decision? Because that's what happened.
I'm sure it was, well, I shouldn't say I'm sure. I would assume that it was some counsel inside of Laura that was directed to do exactly that. Mm-hmm. Figure out how and why we're going to explain this away. And there it was. And then he signed his name.
And we don't think that that's going to happen this time.
No. I highly doubt it. I mean, maybe. Who knows, right? But I don't think she will do that. I think she will do the right thing, and she will go by the recommendation of the panel, which is what the statute was written and designed to have happen.
Yeah. So much so that it's odd that the director even has any say in it whatsoever in retrospect.
I was thinking about, though, isn't it true, though, that the way the statute is written, it really does not define what that review threshold or factors in considering are. It's all or whatever they want. You know, in other words, the reasons why you'd like to say, well, you know, the reasons, for example, the reasons given for denying it. Putting aside that they were ridiculous, Zimmer the first time around, they had nothing to do with the task at hand, right? Like the task at hand was, is there some empirical evidence here that can be offered to suggest that it's therapeutic and palliative? And if so, it should be added to the list, period. He went out of his way to...
I don't even think that's the standard, Mike. I think it's that...
Yeah, well,
Did the panel follow the rule of law? Did the panel follow the rules? And that should be the director's sole evaluation, because other than that, it doesn't matter. The panel already evaluated that.
well, the point is... I think the point is exactly pretty much what you're saying, in that... on review, it would seem that he'd have to conclude that the science wasn't there, or that the basis by which the finder of this determination had made a mistake in some way, right? Because because they're the ones that gathered the data. They are reportedly given the data. They read the data. And if he was going to make some commentary on it or criticize that decision, it would have to be on what they were tasked to decide, right? They were not asked to think about whether the doctors are going to do their job. They weren't asked to consider whether or not a preparation thereof had been decided in the court of law. And whatever other third silly reason. What?
That was free legal advice from Mike Zimmer.
Well, it turns out he was not accurate. As we sit here today, we could say. Nevertheless, but...
Retroactive.
It was retroactive, so he is and was wrong. Retroactively, of course.
So we would hope that one passed. I mean, I would think that... that was my point. Like, what would be a reason that... And if I recall, someone tell me if I'm incorrect about this, but the director has the final say. It's something like that.
Yeah.
It's not specified beyond, based upon plain error or...
No, they can veto it for pretty much any reason.
Any reason.
They don't even have to give a reason. They could just say no.
It does say it's subject to judicial review, though.
That's true.
It is.
Which
We
means
could
it would
find
be...
out what that means.
Well, that would mean that any decision couldn't be capricious, not based on law or fact. Right? I mean, it'd be things like that. It would have to be a finding of fact that is not relevant. Like something that's like, that's like saying, like, we called you out because you had
From
2
the
strikes.
ABA.
We called you out because you had 2 strikes. Go sit on the bench. Right. Okay, but it's like you get 3 strikes.
Would Bill Schuette try and review, like, say Shelley Edgerton did approve autism? Bill Schuette wouldn't come and say, I want a judicial review of autism.
He could.
Like, we're just thinking about rejected petitions. What about accepted petitions?
You summoned him.
I did.
For those out of the studio, Bill Schuette is actually on the display in the studio. It's quite disturbing. He was on a debate with Brian Calley and Patrick Colbeck was there. Who's the other guy? Dr. Jim Hines? Is that his name?
Yeah.
And Brian Calley just ripped Bill Schuette apart. I mean, it was hilarious. And Bill Schuette clearly is a big fan of Trump. He likes Trump very much so. So that's good, I guess. Anywho.
Get the Shree video up. Let's talk about that.
All right, well, we can talk a little bit about the Shree video.
We got to play a little bit.
Let me cue it up. And basically, Steve Neveling, who...
I don't care this guy.